The gastrointestinal system. If you want your body to perform, you must provide it with certain basics, including oxygen, nutrients, and water. Nutrition is the process of taking in and using food. Nutrients are substances in food that the body uses as building blocks to make new cells. Substances used to make chemical compounds needed for metabolism, and the energy source needed to run the body. The digestive system digests food, breaking it down into small molecules and ions that can be absorbed and delivered to the cells. This is a picture overview of the different parts of the digestive system. The next few slides are the medical terminology, prefixes, suffixes, and abbreviations related to the GI system. The functions of the GI system include ingestion, which is taking fluid or food into the body, digestion, which is the breakdown of food into nutrients to be absorbed, and elimination, which is removal of waste products from the body. There are 4 main steps involved in processing food. Ingestion, which involves taking food into the mouth, chewing it and swallowing it. Digestion, which is the process of breaking down food into smaller molecules. The food we ingest undergoes both mechanical and chemical digestion. Mechanical digestion breaks down pieces of food by chewing and by churning and mixing movements in the stomach. Chemical digestion breaks down large molecules, including carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, into smaller molecules that can be absorbed from the digestive tract and used by the cells of the body. The digestive tract is a long tube about 23 feet long that extends from the mouth to the anus. The next step involved in processing food is absorption, which is the transport of digested food through the wall of the stomach or intestines and into the circulatory system. The circulatory system transports food molecules or nutrients to the liver, where many are removed and stored. Those remaining in the blood are transported to the cells of the body. Finally, there's elimination, which removes undigested and unabsorbed food from the body. The digestive tract is also known as the gastrointestinal tract. The pathway of food through the digestive tract is mouth to pharynx, to esophagus, to stomach, to small intestine, to the large intestine, to the anus. The accessory digestive glands are not part of the digestive tract. They secrete digestive juices into it. The salivary glands, liver, and pancreas are 3 types of accessory glands. Structure of the digestive tract. From the esophagus to the anus, the wall of the digestive tract consists of 4 main layers: mucosa, submucosa, a muscle layer, and connective tissue. The mucosa consists of epithelial tissue resting on a layer of loose connective tissue. In the esophagus and anal canal, the epithelium is specialized for protection of underlying tissues. The epithelium in other regions of the digestive tract is specialized for secretion of mucus or digestive juices for absorption of nutrients. In the stomach and small intestine, the mucosa is thrown into folds, which greatly increases its surface area for digestion and absorption. The submucosa is a layer of loose connective tissue beneath the mucosa. It's rich in blood vessels, lymphatic vessels, glands, and nerves. A muscle layer surrounds the submucosa. This layer consists of 2 sublayers of smooth muscle. When this muscle contracts, it mechanically digests food and also mixes food with digestive juices. This muscle also contracts and relaxes rhythmically, a type of movement called peristalsis that pushes food along through the digestive tract. The outer wall of the digestive tract consists of connective tissue. Above the level of the diaphragm, this layer is called the adventitia. Below the layer of the diaphragm, this layer is called the serosa, or visceral peritoneum. By various folds, it connects to the parietal peritoneum, which is the sheet of connective tissue that lines the walls of the abdominal and pelvic cavities. Between the visceral peritoneum and the parietal peritoneum, there is a potential space known as the peritoneal cavity. The mesentery is a large double fold of peritoneal tissue that extends from the parietal peritoneum and attaches to the small intestine. The mesentery is shaped somewhat like a fan. The handle part of the fan anchors the intestines to the posterior abdominal wall. Blood and lymphatic vessels and nerves that supply the intestines are present between the folds of the mesentery. Next, the greater omentum is a large double fold of peritoneum attached to the stomach and intestine. It contains large deposits of fat. The lesser omentum suspends the stomach and the duodenum from the liver. The mesocolon is a fold of peritoneum that attaches the colon to the posterior abdominal wall. This picture shows the different layers of mucosa in the digestive tract. The mouth is also known as the oral cavity. The mouth is where an individual ingests foods and begins the process of digestion. The tongue aids in chewing and swallowing and also has taste buds. Teeth break down food. Deciduous teeth are temporary teeth or baby teeth. Permanent teeth are adult teeth. The salivary glands produce saliva. Mechanical digestion begins as you bite, grind, and chew food with your teeth. The flexible, muscular tongue on the floor of the mouth pushes the food about to aid in chewing and swallowing. Taste buds on the tongue enable us to taste foods as sweet, sour, salty, bitter, or umami, or savory. The tongue is also important in speech. The teeth are bony ridges that project from the mandible and maxilla. Each tooth consists of a crown, the region above the gum, and one or more roots, the portion beneath the gum line. A section through a tooth or x-ray of it shows that it is composed mostly of dentin, which is a calcified connective tissue that imparts shape and rigidity to the tooth. In the crown region, the dentin is protected by a tough covering of enamel. The bone-like enamel is the hardest substance in the body. Enamel helps to protect the tooth against the wear and tear of chewing. The dentin encloses a pulp cavity filled with pulp, which is an extremely sensitive connective tissue containing blood vessels and nerves. Narrow extensions of the pulp cavity, called root canals, pass through the roots of each tooth. Each root canal has an opening at its base through which nerves, blood, and lymphatic vessels enter the tooth. The adult set of teeth consists of 32 teeth. Salivary glands secrete saliva, which begins the breakdown of food. There are three main pairs of salivary glands. The parotid glands are the largest. They are located in the tissue inferior and anterior to the ears. The submandibular glands lie below the jaw. The sublingual glands are located under the tongue. Saliva consists of two main components: a thin, watery secretion containing salivary amylase, the digestive enzyme that begins the chemical digestion of starches or large carbohydrates, and a mucus secretion that lubricates the mouth. Saliva also contains salts, antibodies, and other substances that kill bacteria. Saliva lubricates the tissue of the mouth and pharynx, making it easier to talk and chew. By moistening food, saliva helps the tongue convert the mouthful of food to a semi-solid mass called a bolus that can be swallowed easily. Next, we have the pharynx, which is also known as the throat. It is a muscular tube about 12 centimeters long that serves as the hallway of both the respiratory and the digestive system. The three regions are the oropharynx, which is posterior to the mouth, the nasopharynx, which is posterior to the nose, and laryngopharynx, which opens to the larynx and esophagus. After a bite of food has been tasted, chewed, moistened, and formed into a bolus, it is swallowed. Swallowing moves the bolus from the mouth through the pharynx and down into the esophagus. The oropharynx and the nasopharynx are partitioned by the soft palate. The muscular soft palate is a posterior extension of the bony hard palate, which serves as the roof of the mouth. A small mass of tissue, the uvula, hangs from the lower border of the soft palate. During swallowing, the bolus is forced into the oropharynx by the tongue. Reflex contractions of muscles in the wall of the pharynx propel the food into the esophagus. During swallowing, the opening of the larynx is closed by the epiglottis, which is a small flap of tissue that prevents food from entering the respiratory passages. Next is the esophagus. It extends from the pharynx through the thoracic cavity, passes through the diaphragm, and empties into the stomach. It carries food to the stomach. The bolus is swept through the pharynx and into the esophagus by peristalsis, waves of muscle contraction. As the bolus enters the esophagus, peristaltic contractions push the food down toward the stomach. The two layers of muscle in the wall of the esophagus work together in pushing the bolus downward. The cardiac sphincter constricts the lower end of the esophagus so that the entrance to the stomach is generally closed. The stomach is a large muscular organ that when empty is shaped like the letter J. The lining has many folds. The stomach contains acid to break down food into chyme. When a peristaltic wave passes down the esophagus, the cardiac sphincter relaxes, permitting the bolus to enter the stomach. As food fills the stomach, the rugae, or the folds in the stomach, generally smooth out, increasing the stomach's capacity to more than 1 quart. Contractions of the stomach thoroughly mix the food. The stomach mashes and churns food and also moves it along by peristalsis. The simple epithelium lining of the stomach secretes large amounts of mucus. Tiny pits mark the entrance to millions of gastric glands, which extend deep into the stomach. Parietal cells in the gastric glands secrete hydrochloric acid, which kills bacteria and breaks down the connective tissues in meat. Even after mixing with mucus and food, the stomach is very acidic. Parietal cells also secrete intrinsic factor, a substance needed for adequate absorption of vitamin B. Cells in the gastric glands also secrete pepsinogen, which is an inactive form of the enzyme pepsin, which begins the digestion of protein. As food is digested over a 3 to 4 hour period, it is converted to chyme, which is a semi-liquid substance made as the result of chemical breakdown of food in the stomach. The pyloric sphincter is a strong ring of muscle that guards the exit of the stomach. When it relaxes, chyme is ejected into the small intestine. This is just a picture of the stomach. Next, we have the small intestine. So the duodenum is the first part of the small intestine where most digestion takes place. The liver and pancreas release digestive juices into the duodenum. Next is the jejunum, which is the second part of the small intestine, and then the ileum, which is the third part of the small intestine. Villi are tiny finger-like projections that line the small intestine. Microvilli are tiny projections of the plasma membrane of each of the epithelial cells lining the villi. The villi increase the surface area of the small intestine, providing a greater surface area for digestion and absorption of nutrients. The intestinal glands secrete large amounts of fluid that keep the chyme in a fluid state so that nutrients can be easily absorbed. Goblet cells in the mucosa of the small intestine secrete alkaline mucus that helps protect the intestinal wall from acidic chyme and from the action of digestive enzymes. About 90% of absorption of nutrients from food occurs in the small intestine. And this is just a picture showing the anatomy of the small intestine. Next, we have the pancreas. The pancreas is a large, long gland that lies in the abdomen posterior to the stomach. It is both an endocrine and an exocrine gland. As an endocrine gland, the pancreas secretes the hormones insulin and glucagon, which regulate glucose concentration. The exocrine portion secretes pancreatic juice, which contains a number of digestive enzymes. The pancreatic duct from the pancreas joins the common bile duct coming from the liver. The two ducts form a single duct that passes into the duodenum. The liver is the largest organ and one of the most complex organs in the body. The right lobe of the liver is larger than the left lobe and has three main parts. The liver produces and secretes bile, which is important in the mechanical digestion of fat. Bilirubin and other pigments are released from the hemoglobin when red blood cells are broken down. These pigments are secreted into the bile. The liver also converts the simple sugar glucose to glycogen and stores it. Then, when glucose is needed, liver cells break down the glycogen and release glucose into the blood. The hepatic arteries and the hepatic portal vein bring oxygen-rich blood to the liver. The major functions of the liver are: produces and secretes bile, helps to maintain homeostasis by removing nutrients from the blood or adding nutrients to the blood, converts glucose to glycogen, stores iron and vitamins, converts excess amino acids to fatty acids and urea, manufactures many of the plasma proteins found in blood, detoxifies alcohol and many other drugs and toxins that enter the body, phagocyzes bacteria and worn out red blood cells. And this is a picture where you can see the liver. Next is the gallbladder, which stores bile. CKK is a hormone that is secreted by the intestinal mucosa, mainly when fat is present in the duodenum. It stimulates the gallbladder to contract and release bile into the cystic duct. The common bile duct is formed when the cystic duct and the hepatic duct join, and it opens into the duodenum. Starch digestion begins in the mouth. Maltase is an enzyme released by the epithelial cells lining the duodenum. Maltase breaks down each maltose molecule to 2 molecules of glucose. Glucose is the major product of carbohydrate digestion. We do not have enzymes to digest cellulose, which is the cell walls of plant cells. So much of the starch in plant cells passes through the digestive tract without being digested. So it's starch, salivary amylase, which breaks it down into smaller carbohydrates, which breaks it down into maltose. In the duodenum, it's the pancreatic amylase that splits the carbohydrates into maltose. So you have starch to pancreatic amylase to 2 molecules of maltose, which equals 2 molecules of glucose. Sucrose and lactose are also broken down into simple sugars in the duodenum. Fat digestion takes place mostly in the duodenum. Bile emulsifies or mechanically breaks down fat. So you have large fat droplets, and then the bile, which emulsifies it. Pancreatic lipase breaks down triglycerides to free fatty acids and glycerol. So you have triglycerides, lipase, fatty acids, and glycerol. Finally, protein digestion. Protein digestion begins in the stomach, where the enzyme pepsin breaks down most proteins to smaller molecules called polypeptides. Proteins consist of small molecules called amino acids, which are linked together by chemical bonds called peptide bonds. During protein digestion, peptide bonds are broken and free amino acids are released. In the duodenum, the enzyme trypsin breaks down proteins and polypeptides to smaller protein fragments called peptides. Peptides are digested by enzymes called peptidase, which split into two free amino acids, which are the final products of protein digestion. After food has been digested, the nutrients are absorbed by intestinal villi. Intestinal villi contain a large network of capillaries that branches from an arteriole and empties into a venule. A lacteal is a central lymph vessel in each villus. Amino acids and simple sugars are absorbed into the blood and transported to the liver via the hepatic portal vein. Fatty acids are absorbed into lacteals. They circulate through the lymph system before entering the blood. Next, we have the large intestine. The large intestine helps to regulate water balance. After chyme has moved through the stomach and small intestine, it consists mainly of water and indigestible waste such as cellulose. Chyme takes 3 to 10 hours to become feces, which is water, solid waste material, bacteria, and mucus. When a peristaltic contraction brings chyme toward it, the ileocecal valve opens, allowing the chyme to enter the large intestine. The ileocecal valve shuts the small intestine off from the large intestine. The cecum is a pouch that forms the first part of the large intestine. The vermiform appendix is a blind tube that hangs down from the end of the cecum. The colon is the area between the cecum and the rectum of the large intestine. The ascending colon extends from the cecum straight up to the lower border of the liver. As it turns horizontally, it becomes the transverse colon. The transverse colon extends across the abdomen below the liver and stomach. On the left side of the abdomen, the descending colon turns downward. It empties into the sigmoid colon, which empties into the rectum. It ends in the anus, the opening for the elimination of feces. The word defecate means to expel feces. The functions of the large intestine include absorption of sodium and water, providing the ideal environment for bacteria that work to prevent disease, and the elimination of waste. This is the path that the chyme takes through the large intestine. So chyme, ileocecal valve, cecum, ascending colon, transverse colon, descending colon, sigmoid colon, rectum, anus. Bowel elimination is also called stool, feces, or bowel movement. The frequency will vary by individual. Regularity prevents complication. Typically, the color is brown, although foods can cause color to change. Iron medications will change the color to black. Consistency is soft, moist, and formed. Foods can change the consistency, as can illness. Things not normally found in stool include blood, mucus, pus, and worms. What to report to the nurse? Abnormally colored stool, so white, black, or bloody, hard, dry stool, liquid stool or diarrhea, the inability of a patient to have a bowel movement or constipation, pain with bowel movements, stool that contains blood, mucus, or pus, and stool incontinence. Guidelines to promote normal bowel elimination. Encourage adequate fluid intake. Diet with adequate fiber. Promote regular exercise. Provide good oral care to keep the mouth and teeth healthy. Provide privacy and allow plenty of time. Follow the resident's pattern for bowel elimination. Laxatives are sometimes ordered by the physician to stimulate bowel activity. Age-related changes to the GI system. Decreased taste, Sweet is the last to remain. Loss of teeth affects the ability to chew. Decreased saliva and digestive fluids slows the digestion of food. Medical conditions may cause difficulty swallowing. Decreased absorption of vitamins and minerals. Decreased rate of digestion leads to constipation. Some common disorders of the GI system. The first one is heartburn or acid reflux. It occurs when the sphincter muscle where the esophagus enters the stomach has poor muscle tone, allowing gastric acid to enter the esophagus. Symptoms include pain in the chest, burning in the esophagus, and a bitter taste in the mouth. Heartburn usually occurs after meals. GERD is the more serious form of acid reflux. With GERD, the backflow of stomach acid occurs chronically and causes damage to the body over time. GERD is known as gastroesophageal reflux disease. Next is flatulence, which is gas or flatus. It occurs because too much air is in the GI tract. It's caused by certain foods, such as beans, broccoli, or high fiber. Exercise may provide relief, and lying on the left side may be helpful. For lactose intolerant people, dairy can also cause flatulence. Constipation is difficult, painful elimination of stool. Stool is usually hard and dry. Symptoms include abdominal swelling, gas, irritability, and straining during bowel movements. It may be relieved with easy-to-digest high-fiber foods such as berries, bananas, prunes, increased water, and exercise. This picture just shows some common causes of constipation. So we have stress, pregnancy, different medications, not eating enough fiber, lack of exercise, and not drinking enough water. Diarrhea is frequent liquid or semi-liquid stool. Causes include infections, irritating foods, medications, stress or anxiety, illness or disease process. Treatment includes the BRAT diet. BRAT stands for bananas, rice, apples, and tea. Medications may be ordered, and probiotics may be ordered. Fecal incontinence is involuntary passage or oozing of stool. Causes include loss of muscle tone at the anal sphincter, loss of nerve control at the anal sphincter, and fecal impaction. Treatment includes dietary changes, medications, and bowel training. The goal of bowel training is to have bowel movements on a regular schedule. It's done by stimulating a bowel movement with a suppository. Fecal impaction occurs when hard, dry feces accumulates in the rectum and the resident cannot expel it. Symptoms include no stool for several days, complaints of abdominal pain, abdominal distension, nausea, vomiting, and then oozing liquid stool. The fecal impaction must be manually removed. Prevention includes encouraging adequate fluid intake, a diet high in fiber, adequate exercise, and regular toileting schedule. An enema is the placement of fluid into the lower bowel by way of the rectum. Nurse aides may only give enemas that contain no additives. The types are tap water, which is 500 to 1,000 mLs of tap water, soap suds, which is 500 to 1,000 mLs of tap water with Castile soap added. Castile soap is made up of 100% plant-based oils, where regular soap typically uses animal fats. A saline enema is 500 to 1,000 mLs of water with salt added. And then prepackaged ones, or Fleets enemas, are 120 milliliters of saline or oil. An ostomy is an opening from the area inside the body to the outside of the body. With a colostomy, the intestine is brought outside the abdomen. The stoma is the opening in the abdomen, and the colostomy bag is the appliance that covers the stoma and into which the stool drains. In diverticular disease, small bulges or pockets develop in the lining of the intestine. In diverticulitis, the pockets are inflamed. With Crohn's disease, it's a chronic condition that causes inflammation of the digestive tract. Cancer of the colon or rectum, trauma, diverticulitis, and Crohn's disease are all causes or reasons for a patient to have a colostomy. When a patient has a colostomy, no stool will be eliminated through the rectum. Instead, it goes through the stoma and into the colostomy bag. When caring for a resident with a colostomy, it's important to treat the resident with respect, to be sensitive and supportive, to provide privacy for the resident or nurse to change the bag, and to report observations to the nurse. Some observations that might be reported to the nurse are the color and consistency of stool, unusual odor, blood, pus, or mucus in the bag, leaking around the seal of the bag, flatus accumulating in the ostomy bag, complaints of pain in the abdomen, and distended abdomen.